perceive him as doing in this situation, Sergeant Johnson?
As Officer Potter says, taser, 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 Sergeant Johnson's torso is coming back and out of the front passenger side door. His feet are on the ground there. Both of his hands are on the passenger, or at least in the direction of the passenger. I can't make out from this frame exactly what he's holding.
And does he appear to have hold of Mr. Wright?
I don't. I'd have to watch the video. I'm not sure whether he's holding Mr. Wright's hand there as the fingers, or I believe that is. I believe those are Mr. Wright's fingers, but I'd have to watch it to make completely sure.
So during this course of events, was Mr. Wright able to drive the vehicle?
Not with Sergeant Johnson preventing the vehicle from driving, as evidenced by the fact that the vehicle didn't move until later.
And so in your opinion, if a reasonable officer in Officer Potter's position had been aware of these facts that we've just seen regarding Officer Johnson, would it have been reasonable and proportional for an officer to use deadly force on Mr. Wright there?
No, not at this point. There was certainly some risk while Mr. Wright was scrambling for the shifter to put the car in gear. Once Sergeant Johnson has backed out of the vehicle and is no longer at risk of being dragged or carried away or anything like that, then there is no threat to him of the vehicle moving at that point.
So then, based on all this, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of professional certainty as to whether Officer Potter's use of deadly force in shooting Mr. Wright with your gun was justified?
I do, yes.
And what is that opinion?
That the available evidence leads me to conclude that a reasonable officer in Officer Potter's position would not have concluded that there was an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, and thus that the use of deadly force was excessive, that is, disproportionate to the threat presented. And regardless of whether the reasonable officer would have perceived an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, the use of deadly force under the circumstances was inappropriate because of the danger that it created to the other two officers and the passenger in Mr. Wright's vehicle.
Donald Schweitzer, your thoughts about the testimony from the use of force expert, which is really conflicting with the officers who testified during the prosecution case, but this is the first witness for the prosecution who said it's not reasonable, the use of the gun, the use of deadly force, or the use of a taser.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with him more. What we have here is a person with a felony warrant for gun possession. He's got weapon violations. He's resisting arrest in an open car where there could be weapons secreted. Everybody knows that that's where weapons are typically found and police officers get shot. And then you have another officer that's trying to stop him, and he's dangling in the car. And this car is ready to go, and he could be taken off. Now, I don't think that Officer Potter was thinking of these things when she pulled what she thought was her taser, but she would have been justified in using deadly force if she believed that this guy was about to put his foot on the pedal and start dragging her partner, her supervisor, down the road, and that stuff does happen. So I think that this expert was really mincing his words because he claims that he believes that that wasn't a threat. You can look at the footage and kind of see that it was.
And Donald, one of the other aspects of this motor vehicle stop is they also found that there was a protective order, against Dante Wright involving a female. And there was a female in the car who they hadn't quite identified if she was the one that was the subject of the protective order to keep Dante Wright away from her. So put that into the mix and tell me your thoughts about, all right, you know who he is, you'll get him another day.
Yeah, the police officers are sworn to protect and serve other people, and that includes victims of domestic violence. That includes the whole public. You got somebody that's got a warrant for weapons violations, and he's resisting, and you also have a duty to protect the people in the car as he's trying to flee, not only the officer that would be dangling from there, but that passenger who you don't know about. Now, this is not what the Officer Potter wasn't thinking about all these things, I don't think, but we're talking about whether it was a use of force and whether that was justified. I disagree with that expert in this meeting.